feel like just about every franchise out there has at least one thing that we will never get the answer to, and Pokemon is no exception. What's underneath a Diglett? Or more importantly Dugtrio? Why there are no Dark-type gyms? Who is Ash's father? Who is the Masked Royal? Seriously, who? This has always bugged me since Sun and Moon. Oh well, I guess we'll never know. Some of these questions we'll most likely never get a proper answer to, so I wanted to cover 10 of the most interesting questions and mysteries about the Pokemon franchise that so far we are still unsure about. Well, I at least find them pretty interesting. So let's start with... Are plant Pokemon made up of meat or, well, plant? Like for example, Cherubi. Is it just an animal with the appearance of a cherry? Or is it a sentient cherry? This Pokédex entry states that they're full of nutrients, and apparently very tasty. If I had to guess, I'd go with it tastes like cherry, since it's supposed to be sweet as well, but this question still applies to just about every single other plant type Pokemon, or even grass types in general. Take Snivy for example. Is it made up of meat or grass? And if it's made up of meat, would it still taste like meat? Also its tail. At what point will it start to taste like a leaf? I don't know. Some people may have the answers to this, but for now, this one for most Pokemon is going to go under the unanswered category. Which Pokemon died in the Burning Tower? A theory that goes all the way back to Generation 2. Originally theorized to be the 3 Cantonian evolutions that Hoa revived into the legendary beasts, but there's still no clear-cut proof that this is true. This raises even more questions after the 6th episode of the Pokemon Generation series, where we see the event happen. We see the silhouettes of the Pokemon that were revived into the 3 legendary beasts, and it's safe to say that these are definitely not evolutions. Now some people might not count the Pokemon Generations episodes as something that we can completely follow, because these episodes are supposed to just give us a good idea of how certain events in the Pokemon story played out. If these silhouettes are Pokemon that got revived, and definitely aren't evolutions, then I have a few guesses. We know that these are confirmed to be actual Pokemon, and not some regular animal, so it's likely that these Pokemon are ones that we haven't even seen yet. Hell, maybe in a future generation we'll get a Pokemon that is shaped exactly like this. Out of all the Pokemon that we know about, the only one I see somewhat fitting one of these shapes is Houndour. Not completely, but to some extent. Some people would disagree with this, since Houndour is a dark type, but if Hoa did revive a Pokemon, I see it totally possible for the Pokemon to be purified, and in the process losing the dark type. Also, who says that these Pokemon have to be the same type as the Pokemon that they become? They could have been just regular normal types that gain the new typing after being revived. Or we'll just never receive confirmation on what Pokemon became the legendary beasts. Which is also fine. How does the move Payday / Meowth work? Now let me explain. For a long time, Payday was known as Meowth's signature move. If a Pokemon uses Payday in battle, it leaves money for the trainer to pick up when the battle ends. People therefore seem to think that having a Meowth equals free money. Just have it use Payday and you're set for life. Small problem. What is the currency that Meowth gives out when it's using Payday? Is it the currency in the Pokemon world, which would most likely be completely useless in the real world? Is it just gold? The animation for Payday shows coins attacking the opponent, and they look exactly like the ones on Meowth's head. So it's that? Which might be the case if only Meowth could learn this move. However, other Pokemon can also use Payday. The entry for Payday says that the Pokemon throws coins. But again, what type of coins? Is it just spare change that it found on the ground? In the games, this is money you didn't have before, so where is it coming from? We'll probably never know for sure. But now I'm beginning to question whether Meowth would actually be a beneficial Pokemon to have in the real world. I mean, if it turns out that it can't give you free money, I guess it can give you at least 1 gold coin. We know that in Pokemon, fathers can be pretty hard to come by, but there's one character's father that I'm very curious about. Who is Veritys Father? Now this is going to contain some spoilers from the Pokemon I Choose You movie, so if you haven't seen the 20th Pokemon movie yet, and you don't want to be spoiled for whatever reason, I suggest watching the movie before continuing. So in this movie, Ash's female companion is a girl named Verity. We don't know too much about her, except that she has a Piplup, a Lapras, and is from good old Twinleaf Town back in Sinnoh. In fact, both of Ash's friends in the movie are from Sinnoh. Anyway, at one point in the film, we see a picture of Veritys' mother, who has been confirmed to be none other than the Sinnoh champion, Cynthia. Yes, Cynthia has a daughter. Well, most people, I think, would say that the movie isn't canon, since it is a different version of the Pokémon anime, but that doesn't stop us from being curious as to who the father of Verity is. The Pokémon canon has been changed before, and if, let's say, Verity does make an appearance in the eventual Diamond and Pearl remakes, who knows? Maybe we will eventually discover the answer to this question. Who is the Masked Royal? Okay, I'm obviously joking. We all know who's under that mask. It's your mother. Is Wally's Gallade in Sun and Moon the same one that's in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, since the one he caught in Oras is in a Pokeball, yet the one he has in Sun and Moon is in an Ultra Ball? This one goes for pretty much any character who's made an appearance in the Gen 7 games, who had a Pokemon that was originally in a Pokeball and is now in a different type of ball. But to represent all these cases, I'm using Wally, since he's one of, if not the first person where we see this happen, and it's easier to explain using him. As we all know, in the Gen 3 games and the remakes, Wally catches the Rots at the beginning of the game in a Pokeball, becoming his first Pokemon, not including the Zigzagoon that he was given to catch the Rots with. However, in Sun and Moon, Wally's Rots is now Gallade and is for some reason in an Ultra Ball. So, what gives? Is this a totally different Gallade? Well, I have some possible explanations. 1. Wally somehow managed to swap the ball that Gallade's in. 2. This Wally is from a different universe as the Oras Wally, where this Wally used an Ultra Ball instead of a Pokeball. 3. This just so happens to be someone who looks exactly like Wally, is called Wally, and has a Gallade which is in an Ultra Ball. 4. Wally is a Ditto. Obviously Game Freak just wanted to add the nice touch of having NPCs that have Pokemon that aren't just in Pokeballs. But it is still pretty weird seeing characters with Pokemon we've obviously seen before in a regular Pokeball, suddenly in a Master Ball. Kind of messes with the continuity a bit. I personally kind of like the different universe theory, as it would explain why Wally hasn't aged, despite the events of Oras taking place years before Sun and Moon. But I guess this is just another question that we won't be getting an answer to anytime soon. If one of the 3 Doug trios leaves the other 2, are they still a Doug trio? And if they all go their separate ways, do they just become Diglets? Also, if just one leaves, do we then call this Pokemon a Doug duo? In fact, you could ask this question about other Pokemon. What happens if you take away 1 or 2 of the bodies that make up Magneton? What happens if you take the ring off Klinklang, etc.? If taking the shelter off Slowbro's tail makes it devolve back into Slowpoke, would the same happen to these Pokemon? Who knows? Maybe it isn't the same. Maybe Doug Trio are connected somehow underground. Maybe Magneton's magnetism is so strong that nothing can separate them. There might be more to it, to be honest, since it does weigh 10 times a Magnemite even though it's basically 3 Magnemites stuck together. This also makes me wonder about the opposite. When a Pokemon like Execute evolves, which faces become which? Do half of them just die upon evolution? I'm probably thinking a bit too hard about this. Is Pokemon Go part of the Pokemon timeline? Now I don't know the exact origin of this theory, but this was covered by the channel The Game Theorists, and it's pretty interesting. The theory is that Pokemon Go takes place before Generation 1, and before the Great Pokemon War that LT Surge talks about. The candy in Pokemon Go used to strengthen Pokemon eventually becomes rare, hence the name Rare Candy. Ditto wasn't available for a while because, well, Mew wasn't cloned yet. And Professor Willow may or may not be Price, the Ice Gym leader of Johto. I wanted to bring this up in a video because the theory is very interesting. Of course, nothing is confirmed about Pokemon Go actually being part of the Pokemon timeline, and Price having the middle name Willow might just be a complete coincidence, but in my opinion it's definitely something worth looking more into. Why are there certain items and Pokemon coded into certain Pokemon games that you can never get access to? A good example of this is that just about every Diamond and Pearl key item was coded into Pokemon Sun and Moon. Why? Well, if Diamond and Pearl remakes were happening on the 3DS, this would be understandable. But it's been confirmed that Ultra Sun and Moon are the last main series Pokemon games on the 3DS, so this is not the case. Which makes us question why the Gen 4 key items were left in the Sun and Moon code even more. It's possible that Game Freak were planning for something that they didn't end up doing, like how AZ's Floette was technically in X and Y, but was never released. So does this mean that Game Freak were thinking about making Gen 4 remakes for the 3DS, but decided not to? That's probably a stretch, but who outside of Game Freak knows for sure? Who is Misty dating? Yeah, in the Gen 2 games, as well as the remakes, Misty spotted what seems like to be on a date with someone. Who she's on a date with is still technically a mystery, but I think I may have a good idea who exactly this mystery date is. You see, as soon as the guy sees you, he seems surprised, and then runs for it. There are people already around the area, so it isn't like they're exactly alone. Why would he run away? Unless he knows who you are. So because of these reasons, I think I know exactly who this mystery date is. He's your father! Or maybe not, and we'll never know. And finally, the most important question in Pokémon. The question that many of us have wondered since the 4th generation started. The question that we deserve to know the answer to more than any other question. And that question is...
Is Mamoswine a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle? Now this might seem a little bit silly, it might seem a little bit obvious, but I'm
kidding. This is not a question on the actual list. Because we already know it's true. I really wanted to bring this one up because it's such an intriguing part of the Gen 6 games. In fact, I've been wanting to make a video on this character for a long time now, but there just isn't a single solid answer I feel comfortable going with. So instead I'll tell you what I think in this video. We know that the Ghost Girl appears in both X and Y and Oras. We also know that Oras takes place at the beginning of the Pokemon timeline, years before X and Y. So assuming the Ghost Girl that appears in Oras is the same one that appears in X and Y, which I'm pretty sure they're the same person, we know that she's been looking for someone for quite a while now. The best theory I found on this subject was on Reddit. The person's theory is that the Ghost Girl is looking for none other than AZ, and that the identity of the Ghost Girl is AZ's deceased mother. After AZ went on to create his machine to revive Floette, he figured, why stop there? If he can bring Pokemon back to life, why not humans as well? Well, this wouldn't really explain the time she was in Hoenn, unless this has something to do with characters from Oras as well. The character Zinnia holds the role of Lawkeeper. The person before her to hold this role was a deceased friend of Zinnia's, Asta. Asta passed away after being in a battle that involved Rayquaza, and Zinnia now wears her partially burnt cloak Asta once wore. Asta? Zinnia? Yeah, it was probably just a coincidence, but still fun to speculate. Also, none of this really explains why the Ghost Girl was trying to listen out for the elevator, as well as could AZ even fit in an elevator. But nonetheless, it's still interesting to think about. But until we get further proof from Game Freak in a future Pokemon game, it looks like this question will also be left unanswered. And those are some pretty interesting questions about Pokemon that we may never get an answer to. And maybe it's a good thing that these things will remain a mystery. There are so many interesting theories about the franchise that have stayed unanswered, but are still fun to theorise and speculate, and hopefully more will come in the future. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more Pokemon content in the future, and until next time, thanks so much for watching.